On Scene 3 News, trade war talks in Washington, D.C. heat up as European leaders discuss the proposed plan.
And a fire in California takes out a city block.
And in weather, it looks like a very wet weekend, especially for the Texas Panhandle.
And in sports, the Major League Baseball's MVP awards.
Stay tuned. Scene 3 News is next.
From the Broadcast Center at Eastern New Mexico University, this is Scene 3 News.
Top European negotiators are in Washington, D.C., trying to avert an impending transatlantic trade war. Good evening, everyone. I'm Carrie Bowers.
And I'm Don Aiken. Many European nations are opposing concessions beyond the cuts planned in the European agricultural policy. Irv Chapman reports a world trade deal where billions hang in the balance.
The American team was led by Trade Representative Carla Hills, who laid down the gauntlet last week of prohibitive tariffs on French wine. They arrived here at Blair House as the sun was setting in Washington and met for a planned 3 hours. The fear is that they fail to reach a compromise. The sun will be setting on continued growth in world trade. The European community sent Trade Commissioner Franz Andriessen and Farm Commissioner Ray McSherry.
We're going to do our best. That's what we're here for.
Their send-off from Europe included a demonstration by farmers from all over France, popping firecrackers in front of the U.S. Embassy, denouncing the American demand that Europe sharply reduce oilseed production and buy cheaper American soybeans instead. McSherry had his work cut out.
There's a lot of difficulties about it internally in the community, but I do believe that we must make every effort to try and get this deal to ensure that we do have rules and disciplines in international trade that will boost the world economy.
The U.S. Agriculture Secretary thought he heard words of enhanced flexibility from the Europeans.
We're very pleased to hear that, and we're looking forward to see what kind of proposal they might have.
But when the American team left for the overnight recess, they looked less than pleased. Carla Hill's arrival smile seemed to give way to a departure frown. Nor was the Agriculture Secretary his usual communicative self. His European counterpart made the only progress report.
We're settled in again. We're looking through all of the documents that we had been exchanging for some weeks and some months now. And we'll be back again at 10 o'clock in the morning. And hopefully we can make further progress then leading to an agreement. Thank you.
French President Francois Mitterrand said again he opposed concessions beyond the cuts planned in the European agriculture policy. Whether U.S. pressure isolated him from his fellow Europeans will be better known after these talks. Irv Chapman, CNN Business News, Washington. Team.
Bill Clinton isn't waiting until January to become familiar with the workings of Washington. He held meetings with congressional leaders today, including a luncheon with both Republicans and Democrats, and held several one-on-one sessions before leaving Washington today. The president-elect will meet with the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, Colin Powell. First Lady Barbara Bush says her mother-in-law isn't feeling too well. President Bush rushed to Connecticut today to be with his mother. The president spent about 40 minutes today with his 91-year-old mother, Dorothy Walker Bush. Barbara couldn't make the trip. The White House says Dorothy Bush is seriously ill but did not go into details. The president did not speak after leaving his mother's home in Greenwich. A man who appeared to be a priest left Mrs. Bush's home after the president's visit but did not comment. A Secret Service agent told reporters that this is a private matter for the Bush family.
Firefighters in Brentwood, California have control of a major fire which left more than a dozen residents in danger. The fire started this morning in a 3-story apartment building which was under construction before firefighters were able to control the flames. The fire spread to an adjacent apartment building where all residents were quickly evacuated. 2 firefighters were treated for second-degree burns at a nearby hospital. However, no residents were injured. Authorities believe that the fire may have started when plumbers released natural gas from the pipeline in the building under construction. The co-chairs of the Yugoslavia peace talks have left Geneva and are now in the former Republic of Croatia. Cyrus Vance and Lord David Owen are hoping to convince rebel Serbs to comply with a UN peace accord. Meanwhile, residents are preparing for a bitter winter. Christine Amanpour has more.
Sarajevo received its first dusting of snow. A thin layer settled on the surrounding hills and provided some much-needed fun, at least for the youngsters. But the people are dreading being caught in winter's icy grip with no heating fuel to fend off the cold. And so the first of the UN's winterization materials arrived just in time. Thick, reinforced plastic sheeting to cover up the bullet and shrapnel holes in just about every home.
Though there is still some scattered mortar and artillery fire, for the most part the ceasefire seems to be holding in Sarajevo, and it's giving the people an opportunity to do some repair work.
Hammering and welding resound from a truck depot that was hit by mortar bombs a few months ago, destroying all but a few of the 145 vehicles. Today, the mechanics are cannibalizing the worst off, struggling to rebuild what they can. Despite the incredible damage, they've managed to patch up 10 trucks, screwing metal plates over holes in the cabs and sticking bits of plastic onto torn-up tarpaulins. It's very hard, says Safed. We don't have enough parts. We have nothing except goodwill. It is a desperate quest because every vehicle is needed to supplement the UN's truck shortage, and these will soon be used to deliver aid around the city. Now that the shooting has died down, the hospital is also able to take stock. Surgeons have time for reconstructive work instead of amputations. The corridors and hallways are no longer filled with the wounded. Orderlies can find a few minutes to give patients a shave. And although there is still little electricity and even less food, for now at least, these are slightly better times in a city that has seen the worst of times. Christiana Manpour, CNN, Sarajevo.
Diplomats say the United Nations Security Council will endorse an arms embargo against Liberia today to choke off an insurgency movement. Weapons destined for Charles Taylor's guerrillas have allegedly been flown through the Ivory Coast and Burkina Faso. Taylor's troops have been fighting West African forces in Liberia on and off for more than 2 years now. And still to come on Scene 3 News, Eastern New Mexico University discusses racial diversity. But first, here's a look at today's Wall Street numbers.
Here's a look at the fine programming coming your way tonight on KENW TV3. At 7 o'clock, tune in for Mystery and Perot, the ABC Murders. Then at 8 o'clock, it's In Country, Songs of the Vietnam War. Chris Christopherson hosts a special evening of folk music documenting the Vietnam War. And at 9 o'clock on Sports Look, Dallin Sanders follows ENMU and Eastern New Mexico sports. That and more is yours tonight on Channel 3. Television worth watching.
Hello, I'm Louis Rukeyser, inviting you to join me for the next edition of Wall Street Week, when we'll drive you crazy, we'll drive you insane, by taking a look at, what else? Cigarettes and whiskey. In keeping with the spirit of the times, you'll have to supply your own wild, wild women and or men, but we'll talk with the top expert on the first two industries, Emmanuel Goldman. And that's about as sinful as we get around here.
That's Friday evening at 8:30 on Channel 3.
The case has gone to the jury in a trial of a Hobbs man accused of posing as a detective to abduct a Roswell High School student who was later stabbed and strangled. The jurors got the case today after hearing about 3 hours of closing arguments by attorneys. 28-year-old Jerry Kersey is charged with first-degree murder, first-degree kidnapping, conspiracy, and evidence tampering. The charges stem from the September 1991 death of 17-year-old Roswell High School student Robert Stephen Farley. The trial is being held in Deming on a change of venue. And this just into our Scene 3 newsroom. Kersey has been found guilty on all counts, and we'll have more details tomorrow.
If the only message parents give their teenagers is not to have sex, they won't have a chance to discuss questions of sexual behavior and pregnancy prevention with their children. That's the message from Dr. Robert Hatcher, who is the chairman of the Division of Family Planning at Emory University in Atlanta. He's in Albuquerque for a conference called Pregnant Children. What must we do? Hatcher says a strict message of abstinence only will cut off the parents' chance of influence a child's behavior that if the child decides to experiment sexually. He also says that college campuses have much lower rates of teen pregnancy than high schools, even though college students are sexually active. The conference is being held today and tomorrow. In other news around the state, an autopsy is being conducted today to determine the cause of death for a man whose body was found by a passerby on the east side of the Sandia Mountains. Bernalillo County Sheriff spokesman Ernie Watson says authorities also are trying to identify the man. Watson says the body, clad in jeans and tennis shoes, was discovered yesterday about 3 miles north of the turnoff to Sandia Crest. The Sheriff's Department is treating the death as a homicide, and on a lighter note, with a state as vast and sometimes desolate as ours, many drivers who travel through isolated parks may find themselves butting heads more frequently with deer. A New York environmental report says 63% of all deer car collisions take place from October through December. It says chances of hitting a deer are 5 times greater during those months than at any other time of the year. Cornell University researchers say deer usually travel in groups, so if one animal crosses in front of you, more are sure to follow. They say slow down, especially in marked areas where there are deer crossing signs.
With Racial Diversity Week still underway, our reporter Sharon Melton discusses Speaker Jane Elliott's approach to curbing discrimination.
Last night on the Eastern New Mexico University campus, nationally renowned speaker Jane Elliott talked to students and the community about racism and discrimination in this country as part of Racial Diversity Week at ENMU. Mrs. Elliott, a former kindergarten to 12th grade teacher in Iowa, is mostly known for her famous Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes discrimination exercise, which teaches about the problem of racism.
The exercise is to let people, white people, know how it feels to walk in another person's moccasins, to let them understand the anger that's in this country, to let them know how it feels to be discriminated against on the basis of a physical characteristic over which they have absolutely no control, to be put in a situation which is obviously totally irrational, and to have their behaviors judged on the basis of their skin color or their eye color in this case. It is something totally new to white people.
She believes that there is only one place to start in changing the ideas of racism.
You start with the people who are teaching the children. You start with the people who are hiring the people who are teaching the children.
She continued to say that these beliefs of racism, sexism, ageism, and homophobia were not created by a gene, but started at birth by these same adults, and that a lack of a chemical in your body doesn't mean there's a lack of cells in your brain. Mrs. Elliott also discussed the problems within education that have continued to reinforce these beliefs through the books and history we study and the distortion of the maps we read. She even showed the similarity between racism today and old Nazi Germany.
The atmosphere that you created in your classroom with your third graders with that blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise reminded me of the atmosphere that the Nazis created for the Jews in Germany.
After viewing a video of Mrs. Elliott's experiment on a former class of hers, one student related a similar comparison of racism he observed during his travels to South Africa.
I've always felt that, as I said before, that the people in South Africa, white, black, colored, Asian, are in more of an attempt to appropriate the problem than we are here.
She says that people need to stop denying they are racist and become aware of what they say and do. Jane Elliott and others say that with ideas such as the Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes discrimination exercise and other programs being introduced into our society, people will learn not to fear the differences they have with others, but hopefully relish in the beauty of them. I'm Sharon Melton reporting for Scene 3 News.
Joining us now for weather is Jennifer Grossheim. I was glad to see it clear up this afternoon.
Yeah, it was kind of foggy this morning, but it did turn into a beautiful day. So more of that when we return.
I'm Marty Stauffer. Come along for a rare look at a creature whose foremost claim to fame is its glistening fur, the Minnesota mink. But there's more to mink than just a fur coat. See the secretive lives of these creatures as they hunt and raise their young in the northern wetlands on Wild America.
That's Friday night at 7:30 on KENW.
Never invented these robes. I'm not really very practical.
An audience with the Queen is a rare treat indeed.
The Archbishop of Canterbury arrested.
But you'll receive a royal welcome at Buckingham Palace as we meet the woman who signs her name, Elizabeth R.
How very fascinating.
See what it's like to be queen for a day or a night in this intimate portrait of England's beloved monarch.
I do hope you can see me today from where you are.
Sunday at 10 on KENW.
Welcome back to Scene 3 Weather. Let's take a look outside at our current conditions. Clovis Portalis, partly cloudy. Tucumcari, we all had a little bit of clouds today, a lot less than this morning. Temperature for Clovis Portalis is 49 degrees, north winds at 9 miles per hour. Tucumcari, 51 degrees, east winds at 7 miles per hour. Roswell Artesia, 56 degrees, northeast at 6 miles per hour. Hobbs Lovington, Ruidoso, and Carlsbad. Ruidoso, I don't believe saw any clouds today, but Carlsbad was a little bit cloudy. Hobbs Lovington temperature, 48 degrees, northeast at 7 miles per hour. Carlsbad, 56 degrees, and northwest at 6 miles per hour. As you can see, taking a look across the nation, we had a very active day across the nation. Though you can't see the storm fronts, you can see the cloud cover, and that's what we're mostly concerned about. Let's start with our little storm. It looks like a little storm, but it's going to turn into a very severe storm. It's located over Idaho and Washington right now. It's going to be rapidly moving across into tomorrow's forecast. Right now, our main weather, where all the cloud cover is over Texas. There were some tornadoes that actually touched down, some localized rain of 8 to 10 inches. So they do have some very winter storm watches in effect right now. And as far as New Mexico, it was a little bit foggy this morning, but it did clear up quite a bit this afternoon. We actually saw some warm temperatures. Las Cruces, a warm 65 degrees. Today was their high. Carlsbad, 56. Hobbs, 48, 54 for Ruidoso, 57 for Albuquerque, and Clayton, 49 degrees. Across the nation tomorrow is a little bit better picture, so you'll have a better idea. This storm front is pretty much situated. It's not moving very fast, only about 25 miles per hour. But this storm front, as you can see, this is the same storm front that was on the map before that was over Idaho and Washington. It's dragging with it a lot of precipitation, snow in the higher and lower elevations. So that's good for ski conditions. So if you're planning a trip over Thanksgiving, you probably have a lot of snow. So let's take a look at New Mexico for tomorrow. Partly cloudy. It's going to be foggy like it was this morning, a little bit less in the morning, but partly cloudy in the afternoon and a chance for showers. You can see the temperatures are staying basically the same. Let's take a look at our regional forecast. East Central Plains State, partly cloudy to mostly cloudy tonight and a low of 34 degrees and a high of 54 degrees for tomorrow. Southeast Plains, mostly cloudy tonight, low of 40 degrees and a high of 61 degrees for tomorrow. South Central Mountains, low of 25 degrees tonight. It's not even cooling off that much tonight, and a high of 48 degrees. And don't forget the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles, the temperatures will be dropping. There is a winter storm watch in effect for Friday and into Saturday. It's cold enough to turn into the rain into snow, so make sure you watch your favorite programs and stay tuned to the radio to make sure to keep in touch with that. The Weather Channel is real good.
Okay, that's only for the Texas panhandle?
Right, in Oklahoma.
Okay, thank you, Jen.
You bet.
The National Cancer Society has designated today as the Great American Smokeout, where they hope to get the nation's 50 million smokers to kick the habit, at least for a day. For the 16th year in a row, the Society has made an attempt to eliminate smoking among Americans by asking them to put away their packs for just one day in hopes that it will spur a lifelong commitment. This year's theme is Take a Vacation from Smoking and Change Your Life. Fifth graders in Kentucky are even participating in the smokeout by writing letters to their loved ones and asking them not to smoke. Despite the many campaigns, officials say cigarette sales are not burning out. Reports show that worldwide sales rose nearly 13% from January to September of this year, and an industry spokesman reports that even through sales are unstable.
Welcome back, sports fans. We're here with our very own Ed Barrett, and I understand the National League has announced an MVP, and I want to know who this is.
Well, I'll tell you, but you got to wait 60 seconds. Stay with us.
Next time on Masterpiece Theater, Joseph Conrad's brilliant study of an anarchist who thought his violent past was behind him.
What the English need is a good scare.
A big bang.
An explosion against the building.
And who's going to carry out this attack?
David Suchet stars in The Secret Agent on Masterpiece Theater.
That's Friday evening at 11 here on KENW.
Next time on Nova, dolphins. Graceful, intelligent, playful.
Hello, Sissy.
But a look below the surface reveals some shocking truths about their society.
Head-to-head, these two males right here. Head-to-head fight.
Well, they have another side to them. They can be aggressive and nasty, just like we can.
Do dolphins have more in common with us than we'd like to think? A probing look into the private lives of dolphins. That's next time on Nova.
That's Saturday evening at 9 on Channel 3.
Welcome back. Well, it's nice timing for a free agent. Barry Bonds has won the National League Most Valuable Player Award for the second time in 3 years. He was runner-up to Atlanta's Terry Pendleton last year. Ironically enough, Pendleton was runner-up to Bonds in this year's balloting at the Baseball Writers Association of America. Bonds will get a $250,000 bonus from the Pirates for winning the award, boasting his income over the $5 million mark. There's speculation he'll get something around $7 million a year from the off-season's free agent market. Bonds hit .311 with 34 homers and 103 RBIs for Pittsburgh last season. The baseball writers have honored Dennis Eckersley with the second major individual award of the year by voting him the American League's most valuable player. The Oakland reliever, who had 51 saves, captured the Cy Young Award last week as the league's top pitcher. Eckersley joins Guillermo Hernandez, Raleigh Fingers, Vida Blue, and Denny McClain as the pitchers winning both awards in 1 year. A nationwide panel of 28 writers, 2 from each AL city, gave Eckersley 15 first-place votes. Minnesota outfielder Kirby Puckett finished second with 3 first-place ballots and more total points than Joe Carter, who placed third. Carter had 4 first-place votes. Today, the Oklahoma Sooners are back on the practice field. The Sooners didn't work out yesterday because of meetings among themselves and with the coaches. The issue discussed was why Coach Gary Gibbs went with Kel Gundy and didn't play quarterback Steve Collins in last Saturday's tie with Oklahoma State. Gibbs, whose team has this weekend off before playing Nebraska a week from tomorrow, called yesterday's discussion, quote, very productive. And in the NHL, hockey fans have received hopeful news concerning Wayne Gretzky, who says he might return to the Los Angeles Kings by March. The Superstar Center says he'll start skating again in mid-February if his herniated disc continues to improve. If the pain returns, however, Gretzky concedes he might need surgery. The injury has sidelined Gretzky the entire season. In the NFL, a string of 35 straight TV blackouts has ended in Phoenix. The Cardinals have an advanced sellout for Sunday's NFL game against Dallas. For just the second time in the team's 5-year history in Arizona, the local TV blackout of a home game will be lifted. Phoenix will play that game without SAC leader Ken Harvey, who underwent knee surgery yesterday. He'll be out for at least 10 months. Freddie Joe Nunn is also out indefinitely with a knee injury. Harvey and Nunn have been the team's starting outside linebackers. That just goes to show you, where the Cowboys go, good things happen. To the Virginia Slims for today's play of the day. Helena Sokova serving Jennifer Capriati. Draw Sokova to the net. Sokova with a great drop shot, but Capriati with a fantastic cross-court winner. And that's all for sports today, Don.
Thanks a lot, Ed. All right, stick around, and we'll be back in about 60 seconds with a story about Superman that's sure to come as a big shock to you. Right after this.
And get that feeling.
Each week, Bill and his guest will show you the tips and techniques that will have you landing the big ones. Travel the continent with Bill Safe and find out what fishing's really meant to be on Rod and Reel. Thursday evenings at 10 here on Channel 3.
Yeah, that's what fishing is really meant to be.
I'd get paranoid. I'd be afraid of people.
For some people, the world is a place of hostile forces and frightening visions. For others, uncontrollable mood and action seem to overwhelm. There is probably no one among us whose life hasn't been touched by some form of abnormal behavior.
Please join us for the World of Abnormal Psychology Saturday nights at 10 o'clock, repeated Sunday mornings at 6, right here on KENW TV3.
And now here's a look at some of the stories our Scene 3 crews will be covering tomorrow. The Waste Isolation Pilot Plant will be holding a special Educators Day this weekend. We'll have the details on President-elect Bill Clinton's trip to Washington, and our Heidi Collins will fill us in on the Junior High Honors Music Festival. So join us for tomorrow's edition of Scene 3 News.
It's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman, or not. As Jim Walker reports, the longtime cartoon hero may soon become just a memory.
The boxes arrived at stores filled with anxious comic fans. Many had plopped down cash well in advance.
I came in early this morning as soon as the store opened. Came in and I bought it.
After a 2-month marketing buildup, the man who can leap tall buildings in a single bound was hitting the ground like a mortal. Superman is dead, killed in this issue of issues by a supervillain called Doomsday, with a storyline that includes CNN covering the great battle live.
This isn't a dream. He really dies at the end of the issue.
But the lines of paying customers are a dream come true for Superman's retailers. At $1.25 an issue, $2.50 for a commemorative copy, they were snatched up for reasons running from the practical,
the collectability,
to the downright profound.
The death of Superman, it's like a once-in-a-lifetime event.
It is also a promotion more powerful than a locomotive, a collectible of super collectibles.
Not only does it have a trading card, but it also has 4 commemorative stamps, an obituary, mock newspaper page, and even an armband.
Superman has been fighting for truth, justice, and the American way for 54 years. He hit his prime in the 1960s and has struggled against other comics ever since. But this super death is expected to shoot sales over $4 million faster than a speeding bullet.
A lot of people who don't normally read comics are coming in to pick up Superman today.
So many that some stores sold out in a matter of minutes.
Yeah, about 3 o'clock we should have some more.
While there have even been mock funerals for the superhero, most fans are getting ready for a super sequel as the Man of Steel's creators decide how to bring him back to life in future issues. So killing Superman may be the best way to give him a long life in the marketplace. After all, keeping the fight for truth and justice profitable is the American way. Jim Hill, CNN, New York.
I don't know if that's good or if that's bad, but I guess for Superman fans it's bad. But Gilligan's back on Broadway, and now Superman's dead.
I guess it could be looked at as either good or bad. I'm sure it's going to be good for the comic book stores because, well, sales are probably going to go way up since he's gone now, and this is going to be a very rare issue in the future. So I think the comic book dealers are going to be pretty happy.
A collector's item.
Yeah. That's news for now. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.
Our products have a quality which is excellent quality for natural ingredients, and we don't work with synthetic ingredients. So stability of the products has been a major problem in the past, but we have overcome that.
They decided to build a green factory to match their green principles, starting with a grass roof, an efficient means of regulating insulation and temperature all year round. The roof is irrigated with recycled wastewater, which is also used for cleaning floors and machinery. But this is the heart of the factory and the manufacturing process. The size and shape of this giant blender determined the architecture. The soap cannon technology dates from the 1930s, reinvented by the company to make soap powder and save energy. Everything is delivered straight to the customer in recycled packing, and nothing is stockpiled. The factory was built using as much recycled material as possible. The walls are built of bricks made of waste from the coal industry. Even advertising, kept to a minimum, is recycled.
We opted to set the example, and we believe that because there is a strong return on ecological investment as well, we will be able to motivate others to follow suit very quickly.
The company doesn't claim to have cracked the problems of pollution, but its track record in a traditionally dirty industry certainly looks cleaner than the competition. Patricia Kelly, CNN, Malle, near Antwerp in Belgium.
That was about the eco factory, not the eco boat. But that's all the news we have for tonight. Thank you.
Tune in tomorrow at 5 for more Scene 3 news. Good night.
President-elect Clinton's economic team is taking shape with the first announcements from Little Rock. Good evening, everyone. I'm Carrie Bowers.
And I'm Don Aiken. Texas Senator Lloyd Benson has been tapped for Secretary of the Treasury. Clinton says Benson has the respect of Wall Street while understanding the needs of Main Street. Investment banker Roger Altman has been named Benson's top deputy. Clinton has picked the House Budget Committee Chairman Leon Panetta to head the Office of Management and Budget. Panetta's deputy will be Alice Rivlin, former director of the Congressional Budget Office. The president-elect also is creating an Economic Security Council to be headed by Wall Streeter Robert Rubin. Clinton says Rubin will function much like the National Security Advisor, focusing on economic issues. Clinton says he intends to work with the group to build a long-term economic renewal plan.
2 people died and 7 were injured in Somalia today after a truck smashed into a wall at a military checkpoint. At least that was the cause of some of the casualties. The commander of the French forces in Somalia says his troops opened fire on the truck, which was loaded with Somali civilians and baggage after it crashed into the wall. The colonel says under rules established by the American command, the order was given to fire, and it was the first bloodshed since Operation Restore Hope started this week to protect food shipments from starving Somalians. As distress continues in Somalia, some have left the country for better places. Brian Cabell explains what some are making a go for it in the United States.
Fatima Sugale makes tea for her family in a crowded apartment in Clarkston, Georgia. Cramped quarters? Yes. But at least the rambunctious grandkids are healthy and well-fed. And there's peace for all of these refugees who fled the turmoil and squalor of Somalia just 8 months ago.
My country is very bad now. America, she helped me.
America has also helped this little one, a 40-day-old granddaughter of Fatima. Had she been born in Somalia, there's no telling what would have happened to her. In Decatur, Georgia, Somali Ahmed Atta, an insurance salesman, worked his rounds Wednesday, but with his thoughts on his troubled homeland.
I toss and turn every night, thinking of solutions. It is a very delicate situation, but I'm sure something can be done in the future. And I hope that I will be one of those who could try to do something.
He's been trying for the last year or two with letters.
This is the one I wrote to Carter, and I have the one I wrote to Bush in 1991.
They were letters pleading for help for Somalia. Writing letters is the least he can do as he continues his daily life in America. Deman Rage, another refugee, is doing her best to help. A former Somali diplomat, she's founded a group that brings American doctors to Africa.
And donations?
Equipment, donations, medical supplies.
Plans now are for the group to visit Somalia next March. Events of the last day have raised her hopes that her countrymen can be saved.
The few that are left, the few that are alive, will be able to eat. At least some of them will be able to see the sunrise coming tomorrow and the day after and the day after.
They're thousands of miles away from home, these Somali refugees, but not in their hearts and minds. Brian Cabell, CNN, Atlanta.
Relatives of 8 coal miners who were trapped in a Virginia coal mine explosion finally received the devastating news and are waiting once again. Workers say it will be tomorrow at the earliest before the bodies of 7 of the men can be recovered. Search crews found the bodies last night, but because methane gas levels became dangerously high, they were forced to withdraw before they could find the last body and retrieve the 7 they did locate. A ventilation hole is now being drilled to let the methane escape. Russian President Boris Yeltsin is fighting what he calls a creeping coup by conservative lawmakers. Today he called for a national referendum on who should lead the country, the president or the Congress.
The president said Congress was full of ambitious, failed politicians and that Russians ought to vote them out of office. And before heads had stopped spinning in the Kremlin, Yeltsin had bolted and was across town, taking his case to workers at the Moskvich car factory, lambasting the conservative legislature but calling for calm.
Under no circumstances should there, God help us, be an outbreak of any sort of civil war in our society.
Boris Yeltsin doing his populist best to win support for his bold call for a nationwide vote, a popularity contest between him and the bulky legislature. In Congress, Yeltsin pulled no punches, accusing conservative members of conducting a creeping coup.
There is one and only one judge for the Congress and for the president, and that is the people. Therefore, the only way that I can find for this country to pass through the crisis is a nationwide referendum.
The constitutional crisis centers on this man, Yegor Gaidar, the 36-year-old architect of Yeltsin's free market reform. Congress rejected Gaidar as prime minister on Wednesday after Yeltsin had made a series of concessions to the Supreme Legislature. Despite the defeat, Yeltsin vowed to keep Gaidar on as head of government, and despite facing his biggest political crisis since the fall of the Soviet Union, Yeltsin said he would go ahead next week with a trip to China, leaving Gaidar to fend for himself.
There will either be a new president or a new composition of parliament that'll be willing to cooperate.
It couldn't get much clearer than that, but the opposition accuses Yeltsin not of seeking clarity, but rather of using bully boy tactics in all of this.
The fact of the matter is, for the past 5 or 6 months, the president hasn't been ruling the country. He has been reigning like a czar.
Quite the contrary, supporters say.
This communist Congress is like a boa constrictor that is strangling democracy.
It's a political line that is neatly drawn, much like the barricades that separated Yeltsin's supporters and detractors outside the Kremlin. Extra police were called in to keep the two sides apart. While Yeltsin called for Russians to pick between him and the Congress, the legislature suggested early elections for both the president and the parliament. In either case, the constitutional crisis that's been brewing has finally come to a head, and the country is probably the better for it. Odds are the president will prevail. After all, he was democratically elected, and the Congress, as Mr. Yeltsin is quick to point out, wasn't. Steve Hurst, CNN, Moscow.
Senator Bob Packwood emerged back into the public eye after 2 weeks of seclusion to talk about sexual harassment charges lodged by 16 women. The Oregon Republican held a news conference this morning to discuss allegations of improper conduct. Many have called for his resignation. However, he is not considering quitting. Packwood says he'll do whatever it takes to make sure it doesn't happen again.
I pledge to restructure drastically and totally my attitude and professional relationships. And if that requires professional counseling, I will seek it. I guarantee that nothing like this will ever happen again.
Packwood says despite the charges on sexual harassment, his record for women's rights is still just as genuine. He refused to respond to reports that he investigated the backgrounds of some of the female accusers. And still to come on Scene 3 News, all the latest in local news, including a few ideas on what to get for Christmas.
But first, let's take a look at today's Wall Street numbers.
Next on Mystery, when a priceless gem is stolen, Poirot gets a case for Christmas.
No, 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 and again, no. It is imperative to British interests, Monsieur Poirot, that the prince should succeed to the throne.
But someone wants Poirot home for the holidays.
Mr. Poirot, can you help us?
Something awful has happened.
There's only one way to catch the thief.
I set a cunning trap.
The theft of the Royal Ruby on Mystery.
Tonight at 7 on Channel 3.
I'm Michael Tucker. The family is the first place where we connect with others. This chronicle of the family helps us see those things that we all have in common. Throughout our lives, we continue to make those all-important connections, sharing the good times, surviving the bad times. We've learned how much we can do when we work together. And that's what public television is all about. People just like you coming together to support television worth watching. Please call the number on your screen and make a pledge to this station. You'll be glad you did. Thanks.
Sandia National Laboratories won't pay workers' compensation to 7 employees who allege they were injured by working with cleaning solvents. A study has said that some of the lab workers may have suffered brain damage as a result of handling solvents during the 1980s. A Duke University doctor who helped lead the study, D.K. Broadwell, says that some of the symptoms are consistent with solvent exposure, but he and his colleagues have stopped short of saying solvent exposure caused the problems. Sandia spokesman Rod Gear says that because the study didn't make a link, Sandia will continue to reject the workers' claims. The 7 employees from the Sandia's hybrid microcircuits laboratory allege work with solvents caused symptoms ranging from respiratory symptoms to headaches and memory loss and depression. That's according to their attorney, Brian Branch. The Duke study was done after the workers filed claims last spring and summer. It included the 7 employees. An Albuquerque policeman resigned just 17 days after he was arrested on the charge of possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. Officials say 28-year-old Carlos Martinez's resignation was effective November 23rd. Martinez had been a patrolman for 8 years when he was arrested November 6th at his home in Albuquerque's west side by U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration agents. The arrest capped a 3-month investigation by the police department and the DEA.
And members of the Eastern New Mexico University Forensics team returned home from the Arizona State University Forensics Tournament with a third-place trophy in parliamentary debate. Several of Eastern's team members received other various honors. The program is under the direction of Dr. Anthony Schroeder and is assisted by Doug Armbruster and Troy Hunt. In other New Mexico news, a former Roman Catholic priest is waiting for the results of yesterday's molestation trial. James Porter is facing charges in Minneapolis today of molesting a woman 3 times when she was a teenager. He will soon face civil lawsuits in New Mexico as well. And residents of Mora County are still trying to overcome last weekend's snowfall. Workers continue to clean more than 2 feet of snow that has caused the county to be declared a disaster area by Governor Bruce King. The cost for clearing the snow is expected to be more than $10,000. And Santa Fe residents say they have a positive or neutral opinion towards tourism in the capital city. Tourism helps in creating jobs for capital city residents, and they believe jobs are more important than traffic congestion or pollution.
A young giraffe at the Busch Gardens theme park in Florida is getting around much better these days now that she has received some special attention from some unconventional giraffe caretakers. Callie was apparently born premature and her legs were too weak to support her own weight. Specialists from the Stranders Hospital for Crippled Children were on hand to make special braces for the tall and gangly infant who couldn't walk. The giraffe is now able to gallop gracefully, and park veterans say that she's getting stronger every day.
Joining us now for weather is Cody King, and I guess Mora County's having some problems with snow, but it seems to be pretty good here.
Well, it's going to be good for the next couple of days, but by Sunday we're going to see some snow. I'll have more weather when we come back. Please stay tuned.
From the fabulous Fox Theater in Atlanta, the Oak Ridge Boys with Emmylou Harris and the Nash Ramblers. 2 of country music's greatest acts team up to bring us an extraordinary concert. Don't miss the Oak Ridge Boys with Emmylou Harris in concert.
Tonight at 9:30 on KENW.
I'm Marty Stauffer. Let's explore the life history of a flamboyant and colorful bird. Join me for the conclusion of this in-depth look at the wild turkey. Our largest upland game bird is also one of the wariest, and its spring courtship ritual is among nature's most extraordinary pageants. See it on Wild America.
That's Friday night at 7:30 on KENW.
The weather is very nice outside right now. Let's take a look at our current conditions in the Clovis-Portales area. Clear skies, temperature 52, and south winds are at 13. Tucumcari, clear skies, temperature 56, and southeast winds are at 13. In Roswell-Artesia, high clouds, temperature 61, and south winds are at 6. In the Hobbs-Lovington area, high clouds, temperature 58, and south winds are at 9. In Carlsbad, high clouds, temperature 63, and southeast winds are at 9. The high today across the nation was in Kingsville, Texas. They got up to 84 degrees. But the low was not too far from New Mexico, up in Alamosa, Colorado. They got down to a -6. Let's take a look at our national map. As you can see all this cloud cover from the midsection of the United States extending through the Great Lakes region and all the way to the New England's coast. Now associated with this cloud cover is some snow along the Great Lakes and on into some pretty severe snow on in the New England states. As we take a look out west, we see another storm system approaching the Pacific Northwest, causing some cloud cover and some snow for Washington, Oregon, and on into northern California. Now across the state today, the temperatures ranged from the 40s in the north to the 60s in the south. 42 is the high today in Farmington, 47 in Clayton, 38 in Santa Fe, 48 was the high in Albuquerque, 57 in Tucumcari, 55 in Portales, 62 in Roswell, 60 down in Hobbs, 65 in Carlsbad, 52 in Ruidoso, and 58 in Las Cruces. Now for tomorrow across the nation, we can expect to see that storm system pushing even farther onto land, causing snow for all the Pacific Northwest and the upper Rocky Mountains. Now the southwest is going to be pretty nice, and we can expect to see the storm system hitting us probably by Sunday. Out east, we can expect to see snow once again in the Great Lakes region and on into the New England states. Now across New Mexico tomorrow, it's going to be pretty nice all day with clear skies. Temperature will be about 43 in Farmington, 58 in Clayton, 49 in Santa Fe. The high will be 52 in Albuquerque and 64 in Las Cruces. Now across the region tomorrow, we can expect to see the East Central Plains tonight, clear, southwest winds 5 to 15 and a low of 32. Tomorrow, fair skies, southwest winds 10 to 15 and a high of 65. For the southeast plains tonight, clear, light winds and a low of 32. Tomorrow, sunny, winds 5 to 15 miles per hour and a high of 63. For the south central mountains tonight, clear skies, calm winds and a low of 21. Tomorrow, high clouds, calm and a high of 53. The extended forecast calls for Friday being fair, Saturday cold but about 61 degrees. Sunday, the snow is going to move in. It's going to clear up on Monday, and by Tuesday, we're going to see snow and rain mixed once again. So some kind of nasty weather for this weekend.
Yeah, it seems like about the time it starts to clear off, it comes back in.
It's going to come right back in.
Okay, thank you, Cody. The defense industry in our country is undergoing major cutbacks as the Cold War comes to a close. As Beverly Shook explains, however, there are still some crucial decisions to be made about what to do with the military aircraft.
The United States showing its strength in Somalia, while at home the defense industry continues to consolidate. The latest move came Wednesday when General Dynamics announced it's selling its combat aircraft business to one of its biggest competitors, Lockheed.
The industry was sized for a Cold War. Cold War is over. There's still a need for fighter aircraft, but it's not a Cold War need.
The $1.5 billion deal makes Lockheed one of the Air Force's top suppliers of combat aircraft, such as the F-16 and the new F-22. And it leaves General Dynamics flush with cash and on the lookout for tank or submarine companies to bolster its remaining business. The Lockheed General Dynamics deal is the second in just 3 weeks as defense contractors continue to downsize along with the U.S. defense budget. Last month, Martin Marietta bought General Electric Aerospace for $3 billion. And earlier this year, General Dynamics sold its missile business to Hughes Aircraft for $450 million.
The industry's in a state where the companies recognize they either have to be buyers or sellers in order to create value for the stockholders.
While the U.S. government is the biggest buyer of the F-16 Falcon, 18 other countries buy the plane. Its new owner, Lockheed, says overseas sales will help insulate the company from U.S. budget cuts.
Without any new orders, we forecast F-16 revenues to total almost $15 billion over the next 6 years, $10 billion of which is from international customers. So you can see we're not entirely dependent upon the U.S. Department of Defense.
The deal awaits the Pentagon's approval, and if it's granted, the two companies say layoffs will be minimized among 20,000 aircraft workers affected. Beverly Shook, CNN Business News, New York.
Once again, I find myself here with Scene 3's very own Ed Barrett. Ed, tell me something. I want to know what's going on with the trades with the Braves. What's going on?
Well, Don, the Braves made a couple of trades to really improve their pitching staff, and I'll tell you about it in 60 seconds.
We're inviting you to join me for the next edition of Wall Street Week, when we'll look at the investment where the fix is in, bonds. My guest, Keith Shepard, is one of the most respected money managers in the world of fixed income investments. And he'll be giving us his advice on how to reach for more income with the bonded stuff. Should be quite a yield.
That's Friday evening at 8:30 on Channel 3.
Hi, I'm Mary of Peter, Paul, and Mary, and I'd like to invite you to join us for our holiday concert special. It's coming soon on your PBS station.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Watch it Friday night at 9:10 on KENW.
Welcome back. In the NHL, Walt Disney Company has announced its plans to acquire a conditional expansion team in the National Hockey League. The team will be located in Anaheim, California. According to the conditions, Disney must reach an agreement with the Los Angeles Kings for certain territorial rights in Southern California. The Kings are based in Inglewood, where they play at the Forum. Disney must also arrange for a new arena for home games. Discussions are underway with the operators of the new Anaheim Arena. And a lot of action in the NHL last night. Here's how those games played out. The Capitals knocked off New Jersey. McGillney's hat trick led Buffalo past Boston. Hartford proved to be too much for Ottawa, and Toronto topped Detroit 5-3, and Vancouver crushed San Jose. And the Braves did themselves a big favor today. They got Cy Young winner Greg Maddux from the Chicago Cubs. The big righty signed a 5-year package for about $6 million less than what the Yankees were offering him. The pitching-rich Braves should be well complimented with the strikeout power of Maddux. The Braves then turned around and traded Charlie Leibrandt to the Rangers for a minor leaguer. After seeing Leibrandt blow the World Series twice, you can't help but wonder why the Braves didn't trade him sooner. The World Series may be over, but baseball was a topic on Capitol Hill today. The Senate Judiciary Committee questioned former Commissioner Fay Vincent on the game's antitrust exemption. That issue is pushed in the forefront when the Tampa Bay